Hey, what's going on? So the Moogai, it explores postpartum fears through a supernatural lens. How did the two of you collaborate to ensure that this story felt grounded while still enhancing the horror?
I would say our connection as Blackfellas, as Aboriginal people, as Indigenous people, meant that we both, John really, from the very first time I worked with John over a decade ago, understands and writes Aboriginal women in a way that has, I feel, has always made me feel seen, has always felt real and not. So there is a connect. There's an immediate connection and a sense of what we're portraying as Aboriginal people. That's for me what I think uh, kept me grounded was the reality of this as an Aboriginal person.
And I think for me, probably just the trust that we have, because we have worked together before, that we have in each
Yeah,
other's viewpoints. And we've collaborated in writing rooms as well. So we've hacked out a lot of things. And if there was some lines that didn't quite feel right too, or that, I'd just take Shari's lead on that, on what feels right for the character and what feels right for her. There's certainly many times when you write something down and it's a mouthful, and then somebody says it, you go, "Oh, that is a mouthful." Just even down to the points of like, where does she, her intonations, what words does she want to emphasize in a sentence? Okay,
mm,
yep, you feel it. Like it's whatever helps her, you know, connect, and whatever gets her talent out, then I'm kind of down for. Like she's the ultimate arbiter of what Sarah,
mm,
how Sarah comes across.
Awesome. Yeah,
mm.
that's really cool to hear. Were these conversations, were they done before, like when did they kind of happen? Because I know that you guys wanted to represent the mythology very respectful, as you guys mentioned, but like I'm just kind of curious as to when these conversations happened. Was it on set, or was it, how much prior to being on set was it?
Well,
Oh,
we did the short. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you go.
oh no, I was just going to say, like, because we sort of had that big conversation before we did
Yeah.
the scene where uh the Moogai actually takes the baby, um
Mm.
where it takes Jacob. We had a pretty big in-depth conversation before that, and a lot of it was about, um, in a way, giving letting Shari know that it was her film,
Yeah.
because it is her
Mm.
film. Like it's sometimes I think for actors it can be, it's just such a mind scramble between taking the limelight and not taking too much of the limelight.
Mm.
I know there's a lot. Look, I know there's a lot of actors who are, egomaniacs or whatever, but Shari's not one of those. Like, so actually pushing her into the limelight and say, "Here, take it, and I know what you've got in the tank, and you can get out and just run as fast as you want to run. Like, it's totally yours." I believe in doing that with 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 any artist that you're working with. Like, you have to give
Yeah.
people permission to really create. So we had a big yarn before that scene,
Yeah.
but you're right, we did do a lot of that talk on the short as well. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the only time in my life, like, you did actually have to like take me aside and tell me that, like, you're number one on the call sheet. It's a thing. And, for an Aboriginal person, Indigenous person to be number one on the call sheet, it was this moment of like, oh, yeah, shit. Okay. It's not, especially in Australia, the industry is so small. A lot of actors fill their time up with theatre, which is all like ensemble collaboration. Oh my gosh. And, we're all in this together. But like John says, it's like, it's okay to be selfish. And that night, particularly before that scene where the Moogai takes the baby, will live with me forever, because we just made a promise to each other to take the time that we wanted to and needed to, if we had to. because we'd both just been so relentless in pursuing this film for how many weeks were we in then? By 4 or 5 weeks or something. And this was the one night where we were like, this is us, this is ours, and we're going to do what we need. Like you said, the freedom to fly. I think you used a Flojo analogy, John, that night, and it was the only time I'd ever been compared to Flojo in my life, and it'll stay with me forever.
Well, you played Sarah in both the short film and the feature version. How has your understanding of the character deepened with this expanded version of the story? Because I know that probably was kind of interesting, but also kind of daunting at the same time.
Very much, yeah. Doing the short, it was, and the short it's like it's so clear in its form, structure, vision. It kind of was like, okay, jump in, and you don't have to know every single thing about this character, because we're seeing a snippet, we're seeing a sliver of her life. And then coming back to her a couple of years later for the feature, it was terrifying in a way to realize how much of her was different to me. I've played so many characters that are, I guess maybe similar to me, but suddenly I had to come at this woman, and it was a great reminder in like never judging your character as an actor. And I felt so much more empathy for her than I thought I would, I guess, from the short. Like getting into the feature, there was just so much more to connect with her and realize, what being disconnected from her Aboriginal culture and her mother what it has done to her soul and her spirit. And that's, John calls the Moogai an agent of change on Sarah's journey to finding her authentic self, I think. And that really stuck with me and struck me as much more I had so much more empathy for her than I think I originally thought I might. Yeah.
And John, this is your feature. I mean, I know you've worked on many major series, but this is your feature directorial debut. Why is it this story that you chose to tell first in this way?
It was kind of because it was sort of a love letter to my mum. I grew up with a single mum, and she sacrificed a lot for me and my sister, and to my wife and my daughters and kids. And I'm surrounded by, there's a lot more women in my family than men. So it was kind of just a thank you and not to say that I understand what other people are going through, but just to say, if any of this resonates, then, that was my intention. So, because there was a few different ideas that I was toying with about which one I might go with to do a feature about, but this one just felt like it fit all the boxes in terms of, definitely I've been much more influenced by the American film industry and Hollywood. That's probably my main influence. And certainly even going back to musicals and the golden age of Hollywood and Westerns and all of those kinds of things. So to dabble in a few of those kinds of styles, and then also horror, because a lot of these kinds of stories are just real life horror, they're just all based on real life fears.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the way that the film's kind of resonated, and it has with international audiences, from Sundance to South by. Is that why you think? Is it maybe that that woman connection that kind of helps connect the world and those cultural boundaries, if you will?
I think that there's an element of this story that allows the Anglosphere of Australia, the US, Canada, and New Zealand, that we share a kind of a common sort of Anglo-ish history, and that allows people to be able to look at an element of their own history without having to confront their own history. So you can look at ours, we can look at yours, um, and there's an element of that where the commonality works and it's familiar but different.
Yeah.
And then I think there's also an element of that's what I like my natural style. And I don't think I could go away from. I couldn't do art house probably. My natural style is a sort of Spielbergian thing.
Epic scale.
Yeah. So it's. I guess it's like just real heroes and monsters and overcoming and slaying a dragon and those kinds of stories. That's just my. That's probably my natural style.
Awesome. And Sherry, you kind of mentioned like the tone, and I guess the one thing I want to ask about with that is you'll be appearing in The Office Australia, which leans heavily into the dry comedy. Now, I'm not exactly sure when this movie was filmed, but was it difficult kind of jumping between something as emotionally intense as this, and then kind of to jumping to like a workplace comedy? Is that refreshing or is that challenging for you?
Uh Refreshing. It's challenging in the way that artists like to be challenged, that actors want to be challenged, like I think it's I pinch myself that I got to do a horror genre feature film, and then 8 months later, yeah, a workplace mockumentary. Like I'm pretty friggin' fortunate as far as actors and a diversity of sort of body of work goes. But at the time that I shot this, I'd been stuck in Theatreland for quite a few years, so I got to come out and really focus on just one thing. And I've sort of, one of my favorite things about it was actually just having 6 weeks to be in the same sort of focused, disciplined headspace as this, as dark as it is and as psychologically kind of messed up it is. There was still a safety net in it because I wasn't having to jump immediately to comedy or coming from comedy. I had space around like either side of this film to allow myself to remain, to sustain that psyche for 6 weeks, which was awesome.
Yeah,
Can I just say, Shari is naturally dry. She is naturally very dry. So I think even if you went straight into it, it would be fun.
They'd be like, whatever.
Naturally dry.
Well, yeah, digging into you guys' like filmographies, like it was pretty wild because there's a lot of variety coming from both of you guys. Yeah. So it almost kind of seemed like the natural buildup was there, like basically, and speaking of that, working with Causeway Films, it just seemed inevitable, really. And they're known for the Babadook, which amazing film. Talk to Me, amazing film. Yeah. That comes with high expectations, and especially in the horror genre, like those are like, it's so many top 10 lists of horror of all time. Did that support help shape the project, or did that make it more like, I don't know, like was that strenuous kind of jumping into that, knowing that you had these big shoes to fill, or I would assume you guys were ready based on what I know about y'all.
Yeah, no, it wasn't strenuous. I mean, it wasn't strenuous in that way. Like expectations are kind of I don't know, they're only heavy if you carry them.
Yeah.
But in terms of what you said before there about tone, like all films are tone and pacing, aren't they? Like those are your core things. If you can get the right tone for your genre and for your piece and your story and the right pacing, and so those elements are were my focus. Those were probably the heavy things that I carried, tone and pacing.
Yeah, I was very much in the vein of, oh my God, this is our first, I mean, to my knowledge, our first Aboriginal horror feature, which was just endlessly exciting. I think I felt like, you could either feel the responsibility and the weight of all this expectation, or you could actually just allow yourself to be like, this is the first, and hopefully the first in a long, in creating a canon of Aboriginal Indigenous horror genre from Australia. Like, I think it's going to be real, that's for me, that was the most exciting part, like turning that, instead of feeling it as weight, it was actually excitement, going, we're doing this. We're the first ones. There's been other horror films by white people about Aboriginal culture or Aboriginal spirituality or supernatural elements. But in terms of written, produced, directed by, this is our first. And that for me took away kind of any sense of fear or strenuous sort of expectations, but actually just joy that we get to do this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When the press sheet came across my desk, the more I looked into it, the more I just got excited. Motherhood, identity, cultural trauma. Like I think John, one of you guys said it checks all the boxes. Like it's dynamic enough that like there's a lot to touch on, but at the same time, it's so grounded in a way and that probably speaks to why it resonates with so many audiences. It walks this fine line between psychological and supernatural. Was there any discussion about maybe balancing that? Because with Aboriginal storytelling, there's tradition, and I know that you guys probably wanted to keep that, intact as well.
That was a huge challenge, and it's been a huge challenge in writing. And Shari writes as well, so she's faced the same challenge. Like in terms of balancing both of those elements, the traditional Aboriginal stories are about the event. Like they're not about the lesson that gets imparted to the receiver. They're about the story belongs to the event and the person that lived it. And trying to marry that up with modern media and modern sensibilities where a story has to work for an audience. That challenge there at times was like, for me, was like quantum level something, storytelling. And I wasn't sure what to keep in and what to lose or how to transform. So sometimes that turned me a little bit batty.
Yeah, I can imagine. With Shari, with your experience, like kind of, theater, film, and even directing, did that kind of help, your experience or your approach to Sarah ultimately?
Yeah, I think, I hadn't directed by that stage, so I was,
okay.
Thank God, because I don't want to know. I was completely untouched and able to just remain. I'm actually a bit terrified about getting in front of the camera after having directed. Like, I'm like, oh God, do you know too much now? Do you become an asshole? Like, but no, it's yeah, that tone, I think it's also just like innately as Aboriginal people, like there's a balance in us because we have to carry all things at all times in Australia. You are absolutely so much aware of the history and the trauma, but the joy and the celebration and the love in the history as well. Like, Aboriginal history is white Australian history. We didn't colonize ourselves. We didn't steal our own children. We carry all that with us, but we also have to, I think the way we've survived is by laughing every day and laughing and loving and living. So I think there's in terms of John's writing, I think that balance, I'm not undermining how hard you would have had to work, but I also think part of it is just innately in Aboriginal storytellers. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I love, like, from an outsider looking in, I love the way you guys bounce off of each other. I love it. It's really sweet. And I think that that's really nice that you guys have that relationship from actor, director. Like it's rare. And I think that everyone should strive to do that. It's amazing. But before I let you guys go, is there anything else you want to mention about the film or any final thoughts? Ultimately, what should audiences expect, or what do you want them to get out of it?
I just want people to go on the journey. Like hopefully people just come away from the film and they've gone on a journey that that Shari's performance has taken them on, and that, you know, people just connect with the human. We all just connect with each other. Ideally, look, there's some big ideas in there. There's some big metaphors in there.
Yeah.
There's some creepy, there's some freaky stuff in there. There's a whole bunch of things. But ultimately, just connect and walk with another human.
Yeah. I think for me, the pragmatic part of my brain is like, I'm really excited about people from outside of Australia just learning more about Aboriginal people. I think the way to humanize people that have historically been dehumanized is through stories. And I'm, you know, it's so astounding that we get a run here in the US. We are raised with so much American media. And, you know, growing up, like, you know, the first thing you watch as a young Aboriginal kid is Delirious and then Friday, because that's the closest, that was the only media we had where we could see people that look like our family members, you know, people that look like either ourselves or our family. So for me, what I really love is that people will get to, they will start to humanize Aboriginal people because they may not know anything about us, or they may only know really negative stereotypes about us. And this film, I think, goes a long way in undoing that.
Awesome. Yeah, beautiful. Well, here at CineDump, we let the doers know how they're doing, and you guys are doing just fine. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the film, and I hope you guys work together again, because I love this back and forth, and I need to see more. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Jesse. Thanks.